Boy magic. There we go. Okay, so this is the seventh and final, actually, installment of Sales Masterclass series, and I've really enjoyed it. I've particularly enjoyed, if you don't mind me saying so, the last sort of 3 or 4, where it's been much more interactive. Hasn't felt like I'm lecturing, and so that has really come together for me, and I hope you feel the same way about that too. So I'm going to go. Having said all that, I'm still going to go on shared screen and talk to a few slides just to make sure we get this down. Hopefully, you should be able to see these slides, and they'll should look spookily similar to the slides I sent out earlier on this morning. Okay. See a big on screen now. Right. So maximizing yield. Any idea what that might mean to you? Maximizing yield
means getting everything you can from your customers, keep adding value, keep sell something for, let's say, £1,000, but obviously out of that comes other opportunities, and then from that you get another 500, another 5,000, etc., etc.
Yeah, fantastic. Anyone else got a definition that they? Yeah, okay. Has anyone heard the term wallet share?
Wallet share.
Wallet share.
Yeah, I have.
Or share of wallet. It depends. We've been okay. So this is right on the money, Darryl. Literally, this is about say exploiting. I mean exploiting for the positive sense of the word. Your relationships, and in particular your business relationships with existing customers, often overlooked by in the relentless drive really for new business, that existing customers are overlooked, which is what I'm saying, because you've got trust. You've won a customer, and it's not easy to do in this environment. So why overlook them? But it is often overlooked. So you'll often see, I don't know, the big telecoms companies or the big broadcast media. They've got fantastic deals for new customers, and often as an existing customer, you can kind of feel overlooked, and actually they create their own what's called churn in their customer base. They kind of got loads of customers falling out the bottom, and there's a relentless drive to put more customers in the top of that funnel. And I'll come on to some numbers in just a bit, but anyway, that's what I mean by customer yield. Look after your customers. And I could start the presentation there, and that'll be the one message you should take away. But actually, there's loads more to it. How do you do that, and all the rest of it? Okay, so anyway, before we get right into that, takeaways from last week to negotiating and closing, which is it should be a natural conclusion to a well qualified. We've got the right leads coming in through the door. Already warmed up to our value proposition. They know what we do. I'm not going to suggest it's shooting fish in a barrel, but it's, in terms of sales, it's about as close as it's possible to get there. And if you prove your value and all those things, that should close. Asking for the business, really important. What do you say, Mr. Kimber? You can sometimes dip your toe in the water, and so just to understand what people are thinking, you may not be confident enough in actually asking for all the business right there and then. So you just want to know how someone's feeling about that. And remember that no business is actually better than bad business. So negotiate the right deals. Big nods of the head from Darryl there. That's good to see. The whole conditionality thing. So one thing I may not have got across quite as clearly as I wanted last week is that when you're negotiating, it's about training the other party to negotiate in your preferred style. It's not about bullying or anything like that. So if if they're asking you for, I don't know, let's say a discount, or let's say they're asking you for more product, always ask for something in return. So yes, so in Matobo's world, it might be okay. Well, look, Midwin, I want to pay this amount per seat, and that might be represent a discount on your normal price at that level. So, what can you get in return that compensates you, if you like, for that price reduction? And have you got any idea what sort of other levers you've got in the sale, if you like, in the negotiation process that you can ask for in return?
Yeah, I mean, we can ask for sort of 3-year, 4-year contract. That is something we have been doing previously. We're kind of moving away from that a little bit now and moving towards a sort of fairly flat model, if that makes sense, because it was becoming quite difficult to, I think just quite difficult to track that kind of stuff. It was happening quite a lot at the beginning, but we're kind of moving away from that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you say moving away from, without divulging confidences, but when you say moving away from that, what's
so we're going. So I'm trying to think of a way to explain this without. So originally, when the training was originally created, there were kind of a few co-funders from local authorities, and if they were co-funders and they sort of helped building the course, they would get a discount on providing that course for their organisation. We still take input from other organisations, but there's less of that kind of side of things, and we're moving towards what we're calling like a self-serve system.
Yeah.
And yeah, as things start to grow, there's less kind of mates rates stuff essentially we can do.
Okay, all right. I think I've got that. So the principle of if you originally started out with I don't know, a 1 year or a 24-month deal, ask for a discount. Okay, but if we give you a discount, we want 3 years. So and we'll come to that principle in a second. But Daryl, in your world, are there any, I'm going to say tricks, I don't mean tricks, but are there any levers in your arsenal that you can think of?
I suppose really is that in terms of the buying and selling businesses side of it, it's probably negotiating the more preferential terms up front. So, for example, you might agree that perhaps the conditional element is a reduced percentage or a reduced value, but in order for you to get something in return, that they increase the upfront payment.
Yeah, good point, actually, especially if there's upfront costs or above the line costs that you've got to deliver a service or deliver a piece of work. And always remember being, I think it was quite arrogant in it, but it came out involuntarily. But I was in a deal with an investment bank, and we were a 100-person company, a FTSE 250 company, but only 100, maybe 130 people, negotiating with what they used to call a bulge bracket investment bank, building a data center for them out near Heathrow, or wanting to build a data center for them out at Heathrow. And there's about 20 people in the room, 3 from my company, and an army of people from their lot. And we got to a stage in the negotiation where it was looking good and all the rest of it. And they said, we wanted a commitment. And of course, in a big company like that, you can't just shake hands. There's much more to it than say there's like a purchase order, there's a whole contract in place and all the rest of it. And we asked them for a letter of intent. And, or rather, sorry, they voluntarily said, well, we can give you a letter of intent. They said, that's as good as a check. And there's another technical person, Trevor, who I used to work with, who I have the utmost respect for. Last week, I told you a story about Steve. Trevor leaned forward and said, "Well, take the check, please." So that's another thing that you can't stop people saying. But a letter of intent, of course, is not as good as a check. Money in the bank trumps everything else, and people lose sight of that. So often when I do pieces of work, I get 50% upfront as my because an email can be undone. Even a letter of intent actually could be undone if you've got a smart enough lawyer that can look around for holes. Money in the bank, very hard to undo. Possession, 9/10 law. Anyway, so hopefully you won't get into that any of that, but it can actually happen, right? Power of silence. We talked about that. I talked about that, and actually being your authentic self. And I particularly come across this in sending emails, in outbound type emails, where I now there's probably some science behind this, but I could map somebody's image. There are so many false accounts on LinkedIn, by the way, where it's clear. It's I'm trying to be diplomatic with my languages, but the image associated with that account, I'll bet a pound to a penny, didn't write that email and send it to me. It's smoke and mirrors and all that sort of thing. So it's really important to be our authentic selves, using language that we would typically use in our everyday language. It's simpler to understand. That's why Trump was able to rally 150 million people, is because he used language that appealed to his segment of the marketplace, which is fourth grade, so 7 or 8 year olds, and that is a shocking, because we're all educated here. It is shocking. The average of Rachel, you might know more about this than me, and I've put you on the spot now, but I didn't mean to. But the average reading age of the United Kingdom and the United States is about 7 or 8. That is the average. So we're all educated. So the average on this call, we're probably very educated, but the average across 65, 66 million people, about 7 or 8 years of old.
What, in the UK as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You go to the eastern fringes of Yorkshire and some really quite deprived areas, and it's not just about Yorkshire. In Lancashire, with Morecambe, in the West End of Morecambe, the levels of literacy really are difficult. There's a lot. Anyway, I'm going down the track, but anyway, so the point is, if you're in academia and everyone's really well educated, you can afford to be quite ambitious or sophisticated with your language. If you're trying to appeal to the common person, so to speak, such as politicians and that are trying to get the message across to 60 odd million, you have to wind the language down. That's why and I've learned loads about this through, would you believe, TikTok, which my kids think it's hilarious. I've got a TikTok account, and on YouTube, I've got a couple of software subscriptions that tell me what a slam dunk headline might be for my YouTube video or something like that, and they're very clever people that are always scraping the internet for trends on language, what people are searching for, and it almost always tells me to dumb down my language and simplify the language. It's too complex. It's a really interesting process to go through. Well, it's interesting on one side, but saddening on another kind of thing, that you can't put big posh words in there. You have to, kind of done it. Anyway, going off on a tangent, but it's really important that you communicate with your audience, right? It's not to make okay, right. Anyway. Okay, right. So yield, the last bit. So closing the sale, negotiating the deal last week. Now we've got that deal. We're going to deliver on that, and we're going to be into maximizing yield. Now this guy, Peter Drucker, who I've mentioned a few times, not even a salesperson, but if you can put aside, I think the actual reason for having a business is to generate cash. If you put that aside, then the purpose of the business is to create and keep a customer. Emphasis on and keep. We talked about business benefits, didn't we? We talked about what do you sell? What do you really sell? And so it's revenue up, increased sales, costs down. That's the important thing. So has anyone seen this stat before? Which the cost of acquiring new business, depending on what you're selling and to whom, is between 5 and 25 times more than the cost of serving your existing customers.
Yeah, I've seen that before. That retention is absolutely vital, isn't it?
Yeah, it is absolutely vital. But so many companies, and I've already mentioned one or two instances, so many companies kind of overlook that because they are just giving deals to new customers at the expense of existing customers, and you're tied into a 2-year contract, and you begin to hate that telecoms company or that mobile phone company or whatever it happens to be because you're locked into this thing, and you can't wait to get out of it and go on a SIM only, which every telecoms company hates, the SIM only contract. Okay, but anyway, so even though that was done 8 years ago, the numbers might change, but the principle certainly won't. Right, mobile phone industry, this thing called churn, which is the how many they lose out of the bottom compared to how many they've got to put in the top to grow. 36% in the mobile phone industry. Excuse me. There's very little loyalty to the brands of stickiness. It's very easy to. They talk about stickiness, how easy it is to change suppliers. Now, it's painful when you're in the moment. If anyone's been onto a call center, I mean, my God, that is a way to burn time. So they don't make it easy, but actually it is relatively straightforward to change supplier. And if you really get stuck, you can just dump your SIM and just get another SIM and all the rest of it. Now, energy industry. Now, this is a couple of years old, and this may have changed given the war in the Ukraine, which is one of those external market impact events you've got no control over. But energy industry churn was 3%, total opposite. Why? I think it's because energy is boring. Up until February 24th this year, energy is boring. You know, people don't really care. You get a bill, you pay the bill. Nobody really cares if it's SSE or Yorkshire, or I don't even think there is a Yorkshire energy company, but Thames, or whatever happens. If people don't care about energy, can't see it. Whereas, it may be particular to blokes, actually, I'm happy to take that. But whereas people really care about what they carry around in their pocket, most people, I certainly do.
Do you think then people can't be bothered to change their supplier, whereas with mobile phones, because it's a contract with a type of phone, that's why people move?
That's a really interesting question. I suspect the answer depends on who you're asking, but for me, the phone is more important than the telecoms provider. So it's more important to me to have an iPhone versus an Android. I care more about that bit of the buying criteria than I do whether it's Vodafone or 3 or O2 or whoever it happens to be. Does anyone else feel that way, or am I odd?
Yeah, and I think that the reason that it's so much more important to people than gas and energy is exactly right. Gas and energy is boring, and everyone gets excited by shiny new stuff, and we're constantly surrounded by advertisements for shiny new stuff. Who's supplying the shit that goes through your radiator isn't shiny and new, so people switch off quicker. And it's like too long didn't read.
Interesting phraseology. I think you are actually quite close to the truth there, Midwin, because judging by the quality of water we have in this country sometimes.
I'm just surprised because I would have thought the cost of your bill every month would drive a higher turnaround of a customer, but obviously it doesn't.
What you talking about, energy or your?
With the energy, I just would have thought that people would look at their bill going up and then be bothered to change the provider, but it seems not.
Proviso on these sets, the 3%, is a couple of years old, and I did have a cursory glance online last week to check against these numbers, and the Office for National Statistics, which is the place I would normally go to for stuff like this, hasn't got any latest results. I suspect people have become very interested in energy since earlier on this year with Ukraine and all the rest of it, but it will have changed. There will be a change. What the change is, don't yet know. But the principle, I think, will still be the same, is that, yeah, all things being equal, we're not very excited about energy. Anyway, good point though. Right, so when I ran, I used to run call centers for what was Npower, is now Eon, and we had to do, do you remember when we were saying about the change? We had to do 168,000 sales, call center sales, every year, just to keep the lights on, just to basically break even. If we were above 168,000 for the year, then we'd grown our market share. If we were below, we'd lost market share, because the UK is one of the few countries. UK is one of the no, that's something else. But anyway, 168,000 sales is how many we had to do. Right. So now then, sometimes, a bit like getting the second meeting with someone, sometimes it's harder than getting the first meeting, because somebody's already had that meeting experience with you and all the rest of it. Sometimes getting the second order from someone is harder than getting the first one, because they've already tried your product, your service, that engagement piece, and so it's not to be sniffed at winning existing business. You've still got to delight the customer in order to get that second and subsequent sale. So it does take effort. It's not like shooting fish in a barrel. It really isn't. Okay, and a sobering conversation is when we have to look at our value proposition, which is the very first module that we did. When did we start? Early or late September, wasn't it? Mid-September, late September, 21st September. What do we sell our customers? And we might think we deliver benefits A, B, and C, but when we ask our customers, they say, well, actually, yeah, I get A and B, definitely, but actually this is how we really benefit them. The example I sometimes use is Aviva, in fact, I don't know how many people they've got in and around York. I think they still have presence here, Rachel, but they're a big customer of mine for some technology a few years back, video conferencing type technology. Here we are on our laptops using Zoom, but a few years ago, you'd have to spend, if you're a big company and you wanted a few people on the call, you'd have to spend about £2 million and have a high-grade video network that cost 300,000-400,000 a year to run for the people in York to speak to Singapore and have someone else on the call in Norwich or whatever it happened to be. That would cost a lot of money for that kind of service. And we thought they would buy it because it would save them having to jump on a plane with a business class airfare, hotels, and all of that, and it would save them cost. And that's it would save them cost. So that would be really good. But actually, what they said was, okay, we save money and we reduce our carbon footprint, which is kind of important, but it's not nearly as important as what we actually get, which is the ability to meet and make decisions faster than if we had to rely on getting on a plane, traveling. So we can make decisions in the moment and respond to market conditions really, really quickly. And that was the real benefit. And that was something that we hadn't envisaged. Yes, of course, it makes sense when you hear the words back, but we hadn't envisaged that benefit. It wasn't part of our go-to-market strategy. but that feedback did become part of our messaging because we learned something from our customer. That was really important. So I put it to you, speak to your customer, especially with the courses that the Enterprise Works signposts people to, Rachel, and some of those organizations that you do multiple years of business with for a long time is, well, we promote this as getting benefits A, B, and C. 1 year hence, what do you think the benefit was? That can be a really enlightening conversation. I would encourage you to have that. Daryl, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. What about Sooty or whoever is just wandered across the screen?
Bags, he's just sitting here.
Okay, mate, fantastic. Yes. Okay.
Is that a cat or a dog?
It's a cat.
Yeah. Okay. I'm surprised it hasn't not looking more aloof. Cats are very aloof, aren't they? That's why I really like cats. They're just, yeah. Okay. There you go. Right. So I'm going to talk about silent sales force now. Any idea what I might be? Let's come up with share. We're going to talk about silent sales force. Any idea what I might mean by that?
Like so someone, for example, on our website we have a banner of some of the bigger names that we are working with or have worked with. Could that be a silent sales force?
Yeah, that could be a good example of a silent sales force. Yeah. Any other examples that anyone has?
Advocates, referrals.
Yeah.
Case studies.
Case studies. Yeah. They are literally the gift that keeps on giving. So the whole cook porridge pot cook. If anyone's either read those stories out or had them read to them, the fairy story. I mean, that literally is your unpaid sales force. Key on unpaid. They're willing buyers. They willingly do business with you because they trust you. All of those things. And so for me to sit here and say, I'm good at sales process is one thing, and you can believe that or not believe that. But if you've got 50 case studies or loads of recommendations on your LinkedIn of other people that say, Keith's good at this or Medwin's good at that, that's much more valuable than just me articulating it. I'm always suspicious of people that call themselves gurus or experts. Maybe I've just reached that age, but I think it's much more powerful if other people call you knowledgeable or whatever it happens to be. So silent sales force is your website. It's advocacy, as Daryl said. It's is it selling for you? Is it giving the messages that you really, really want to disseminate, if you like? So those referrals, when you get them, what do you do? Do you to recognize that positive behavior that a customer has given you? So in Rachel's team, Amy very kindly introduced me to, well, there you go, to your dad, actually, Medwin. So I met with Dad, coffee shop, I think I helped him with a presentation, actually, and he was kind enough to buy the coffee, and all of a sudden we get talking about other stuff, and here we are. So you can blame him. But that was an example of someone advocating on my behalf, and you're going to have loads of examples where people have advocated and are selling on behalf of you and your customers. So find out.
Yesterday, yeah, it happens all the time.
There you go. So may I ask, what do you do when that happens? How do you say, or do you?
So I'll use yesterday as an example. We had an email come in basically saying, hi, this is who I am, this is where I'm from. We have a few people that we're like connected to who have recommended taking on your training. Can we do that, please? And then we sort of have a little moment of, oh yeah, that's cool. And then we do a bit of damage control and double check what the workload is and decide whether or not it's good business or bad business, and then go from there.
And the people that referred you, do you go back to them and?
So it kind of depends. So sometimes if they're named, then yes, we have, I guess, sort of known friends, known advocates, people that will frequently sort of do that. Not necessarily with us asking them to have done it, but it just happens. In the case of yesterday, we didn't actually know who referred them, but yeah.
Understood. Daryl.
I think with me, I tend to know who's referred, so I'll always say thank you. Probably something that I've been thinking about probably over the last few months is whether there should be a formal sort of referral agreement in place, whether that could attract business or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you get mixed messages. Some people seem to like it, others don't. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's so if you're talking about an affiliate scheme or an introducer type scheme, I think those are perfectly valid. I've got a few with a couple of software companies. I always disclose, by the way, if someone says, "Do you recommend a LinkedIn provider or whatever?" I always disclose this is my affiliate link. They may have to go into the Oxford English Dictionary to find out what affiliate actually means, but I've disclosed that it's an affiliate link, and I'm going to make a small commission, but a commission nonetheless if they decide to do business with that company. I think that's fair and reasonable, actually. But I also think, especially this time of year, that particularly pandemic kindness. I think kindness is a currency. Actually, it's certainly more. It's more reliable than crypto, that's for sure. But I think kindness is something that can differentiate your company. Just being a nice company to engage with. Who needs hassle when you're awarding business? So, is that a Russian fighter?
Yeah, I think all three of us just heard that, Jed. Didn't
There's of course, you wouldn't in West Midlands. That really would be a big noise, but but in Yorkshire, there's a big jet gun, which is quite unusual. Sorry about that, Daryl. So, do you remember back in the Tommy Shelby clip? You can probably not forget Rachel after Friday, but I talk about taking a gift to a meeting, and I don't mean a bottle of wine or a box of chocolates. Taking a gift of insight, something about their market that they don't already know, or something that's happening. If it's a big organization, something that's happening in their organization that they don't already know. Be very careful with that. We don't want to tell tales out of school or whatever the phrase is, but I think people that care about their companies will respect the fact that you've come to them saying a bit of an issue in this department, it's costing you money or it's costing you sales, one of those two. Then I think that's a valid approach, and people who really care about that stuff, if you've done it properly, will really respect the fact that you've given them that gift. So that's another way that we can build trust, build that relationship with our existing customers. So the very definition is you want that customer spending more money with you because you've already won the customer, you've already invested that with that customer. The assumption would be that customer really values you already, so you don't want to be selling against a shut door. If they really, and that's why I say getting the second order from someone is sometimes harder than getting the first order. I mean, I think I'm talking to people that treat their customers well, and so it shouldn't be such an issue. But occasionally, if you've watched The Wolf of Wall Street, you kind of you've experienced those sales tactics. Okay, right. So it's avoiding what we call donor recipient relationships, which is very transactional. It's your service for a cost. The customer doesn't really value it, and you don't really value the customer. I know we're talking to the converted here, so which is good news. But there are customers around where they just don't value that kind of stuff, and you have to decide, is that the kind of customer I want or not? And that's your right and your entitlement as well. So that's a donor-recipient sort of relationship. It's very commoditized. You're easy to unseat if it's a very transactional level sort of purchase. And we're going to talk about customer lifetime value, the value of that customer to you for the lifetime of the relationship. Going to talk about that in a second. Yep. High CLV. Yes. Okay. Right. Yes. Gonna do a bit of a shared screen on this. There we go. And it's on there. Okay. So, lifetime measuring how much a customer is worth to you. We talk about customer lifetime value, and that's an equation. So the revenue. So say someone's spending £100 with you, and it's a 3-year deal. There, obviously the revenue number is £300, but you've invested money to acquire that customer. Now, not everyone knows or breaks it down how much it costs, but it is worth doing to work out where your best sales channels are.
What's CLV? Is it customer lifetime value?
Customer lifetime value. Well, I've actually written that down. CLV. Okay, there you go. Sorry, customer lifetime value. Okay, and you'll find that in. I'm sure they'll teach that in the business school, or I can't remember the name of the new faculty. School of. Oh gosh, can't remember. Sorry. In York, it used to be the business school, or management school rather, but they've renamed it. And then, so it's the total value of that multi-year deal minus the cost to acquire. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. So for energy, when I ran call centers, we would often have the average bill, £210 times 12. That was the annual. It was only a 1-year deal, and we spent £103 to acquire that customer. That was the total cost of running the call center divided by 168,000 gave us 103 quid. So it's a relatively simple process, but an important process. So the lifetime value was total number minus the cost to acquire. And that was the value to the company, 2,400 quid. Okay. Now, is that? I don't mind what the answer to that question is, but is that way of looking at customer relationships valuable to what you're doing, or interesting, or not? No, if the answer is no, then the answer is no. That's fine.
I think, I think it's good to. I think it's just a useful thing to have, and I'll probably be using that sometimes as well. So, and
I think it's a key thing in terms of just going back to test and measure.
Test and measure, yeah, absolutely right. So
I think it's so important to, as you said, working out how much it took to get your customer and where you got them from, because I think a lot of people don't always evaluate their efforts and then carry on spending time on what they think is working. But then if they actually look at the detail and you're sort of, right, where are these people actually coming from? Then you'd start to stop one marketing process or sales process and increase it elsewhere, which is absolutely vital.
Yeah, really well put, Rachel, actually. And sometimes you often find out, particularly if you're a head of department, or you're not really at the coalface pressing the buttons or liaising with customers, numbers tell a story, and it's important to retell that story to the people that are engaging with customers. So even though you don't like this process, you prefer doing this process, for whatever reason that might be, they might like talking to people on the phone rather than being part of the live chat solution. I'm talking about a call center again here. So most people like chatting. We call it chatting on the phone. Well, chatting on the phone costs about 3 times as much as messaging on in WhatsApp or Messenger or whatever it happens to be. I know that because I did it with BT as well last year. It is 3 times more expensive to talk on the phone because you can generally only have one phone call at a time. Particularly if you're a bloke, I can't multitask. But the average agent that's getting involved in messaging can have 3 or 4 on the go at any one time. Those are cold hard facts, and it is interesting. So now there are times when people's marketing preferences, they've said, I only want to talk on the phone. I don't want email or written communications or anything like that, or postal mail. Financial phobia. After the crash, has anyone heard of that expression before? Financial phobia. After the crash of 2008, interest rates went up, and all the rest of it. A lot of people became scared to open their mail because there would be some threatening letters or bailiffs or some really difficult stuff going on, and it became known as financial phobia, and it should be in the Oxford English Dictionary, but it's a recognised thing kind of going on. Anyway, right, so it's sobering, but it's important to understand how much it's costing you to get on. Right, so I want to talk about your customers' best interests. And do you remember I talked about benefits of sell more, cost less? So the principle of third box selling, not by boxes, I'm not talking about IT hardware. I'm talking about obviously you're in one box, you're selling to your customer, but then ideally you're helping your customers grow. You're helping your customers, acquire customers. Now that makes you really, really valuable in their supply chain. And that's an immediate differentiator. Now I'm trying to think live and on my feet, so to speak, about where you all might fit in, and if so, a highly trained workforce, for instance, first of all, is probably more loyal because they feel invested in. Therefore, they're going to perform better. Again, cold hard facts. I haven't got the research here, but it's not about that. It's about, I think most people would agree that that's the case. And there's that famous thing about often associated with Branson. What if we invest in our people and they leave? And Branson says, what if we don't invest in them and they stay? And now whether it was him, it sounds like the sort of thing he would say, but the mantra is true. So if you're investing in your people, your value proposition, and you're the provider of that training, I would argue you're helping them sell more and cost less, actually, because if you've got lower turnover of staff, then that's normally a good news. You can have attrition that's too low, and the civil service is a prime example of that. Nobody wants to leave the civil service or the NHS because they're fantastic pension schemes, gold-plated. Nodding. So if you want 28% of your salary paid into your pension scheme, the civil service is the place to go. So
yeah, my husband's in the civil service.
There you go.
Only in the last couple of years, but he has got pressure from me. James, this is it now. You need to just stay there. Just do your thing and just stay there.
Yeah, suck it up. Suck it up.
Yeah.
Admin
Even if
roles.
you don't like your boss, just crack on.
Yeah. And I can't remember where anyway, trained workforce and all the rest of it. Now, Midwin, with your Matobo thing. I'm trying to think about your customer's customer, because much of your business is local authority type thing. So their customers are going to be citizens. Some local authorities refer to their customers as customers, citizens, residents, local residents, whatever it happens to be.
So I think the value there is in the fact that we're training the council in how not to be hacked, how not to mess around with, lose or misplace people's data, because, you know, the costs of a small mistake for an organization that big can be absolutely humongous. So I would say it's, for us, it's probably lowering costs, because it's public sector, it's local authority most of the time, so there's very little profit to be gained for them from doing this, apart from the fact that essentially they're just trying not to ruin everyone's day.
I'm just thinking it's reputational as well, isn't it, for them?
So there's that, and Darryl, will be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on this. But there is a middle ground between real cost, above the line cost, so to speak, and potential cost, and I would call that risk.
Yes, it's a decrease in risk, a massive decrease in risk, actually, if I was to argue it properly. But yeah.
Okay, right. So third box selling, that was the principle. If you can point to direct benefits with their customers, great news. Okay. And what's common amongst all of that is you and your positioning of your product or service, and you become the link all the way through. I've got a couple of examples coming up, not to say how good I am, but hopefully to sort of jog your memory about stuff that you've done in your past, and it might be useful to bring that out on your LinkedIn. By the way, I did offer to do, as part of this, your LinkedIn sort of profiles, and the only person that come forward for that is actually not on the call today.
I do. I am going to set up a session with you. It's just been a
good. Same goes for you, Darryl, and Rachel as well. If you want, you don't have to, but if you want to, you're welcome to. Objections? Oh yeah, okay, that's something else. Okay, right. So this is my favorite kind of pie chart. It's actually a pie, pecan pie, not as any old pie, as a pecan pie. So, so it's about IT people are IT salespeople are eternally falling into this challenge, because a big corporation probably spends 3% of its revenue on IT. It might be worth working out for a local authority, maybe what their total annual budget is. And for York, these are public figures, so I'm not giving anything away. City of York Council would be about 250, 260 million, I think, in terms of revenue. So the template would be they're probably spending 3% of that on IT. And now that number might change a little bit, but only a little bit. So if they're spending more than 3%, why is that? And if they're spending less than 3%, what risks have they got waiting to come up and bite them? So, but IT salespeople go after the 3%. We want 3% of the spend. And for me, that's missing the trick. The real trick is, well, there's 97% of the rest of the organization to go on there. Let's go do some business development in that 97%. Think differently, and let's go talk to some other people where our service is going to help them, and we can build some value. We might even get more for our product because we built more value into it, rather than just being at the end of a procurement process, or because an IT person needs. Well, I'm not decrying IT people. They're really, really important, especially in my 34 years. Now, Darryl, you looked as though
what's the context that you're talking about here? So it says, where are you focusing?
So IT salespeople are focused on selling to IT people. That was my point. Whereas, and that's only 3% of the overall sort of budget available within the organization, the 97% is where there's loads of opportunity as well. So focus in the right areas of the pie, do it purposefully. Now that might be a bit abstract. I can't
Yeah, but so I think so really, if you're an IT business, you can sell to anybody because everybody wants your services.
I think so. And conversely, in your boardroom advisors or business advisors hat, you might have a similar value proposition which is appropriate for that part of the business, but also that part of the business if there's a degree of autonomy. So maximize your share of the pie, and something I've really excelled in if anyone's met me before. So there you go. Right, did that make sense, or have I confused you?
No, that's fine then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so maximizing yields. First principles. Will your customers say good things about you? I.e., will they engage really in the sales process and say good things about you, help you win other clients? That's that for me is part of the test. Now, some will, some won't. The caveat is if you ask an official question, you'll almost certainly get an official answer. So if you send someone an email and say, would you mind if we used your logo on our website, for instance, you'll get into a world of pain if you attempt that process, especially as a small business. So if you do business with, I don't know, PwC or something like that, it's almost as hard as trying to get a satellite changed orbiting the Earth. It is that degree of hard, and it's certainly not worth it. So now I'm going to go out on a limb here and say proceed until apprehended. Okay, so we're all small businesses. If you do business with PwC, you may not want to use their actual logo on your website, but you can talk about them in the round. Big Four global consultancy with 250,000 people or whatever it happens to be. It's obviously going to be one of those four, but you haven't used their name and all of that. And that puts you in it, but only if it's relevant to other sales activities that you want to pursue. Okay, so you'll find them on my website. They're people that I've done business with in the past more than once, I've just said, and nobody's phoned me up and said take that down. In fact, I'd love them to do so, but them. So anyway, so we call those champions. Those kind of customers we call champions. And if you've got a CRM system, then I'd put a particular flag on the CRM system that says, these guys are worth taking care of. And I'll say something else as well, particularly in the IT industry or where service, you pay a service charge. In the last, if they've got a multi-year agreement with you, in the last 6 months, this is at NCR where I've done some work with them in the past, we would, behind the scenes, if they had a silver, shall we say, maintenance package, we would upgrade them internally to gold. We would over deliver in the last 6 months of their contract to minimize the risk that they would go somewhere else when it came up to contract renewal time. It was worth our while over delivering because it cost more resources, but because existing customers are cheaper to work with than new customers, it was worth that investment. It gave us a very material return on investment, ROI. So those kinds of things. So the first thing is be conscious of when an agreement is coming up for renewal and do something about it. Don't just sleepwalk into the customer sending you a letter that says we're terminating because we can't see the value. Was it Rockefeller who said, John D. Rockefeller said something like, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Well, I think multi-year contracts are the ninth wonder of the world.
Yeah.
If they are just is the way to go. And particularly if you're looking at subscription models, they're just and that's what something I want to do with my business too. They're just they're just the way to go. The way to go.
If you think of business valuations, if you've got recurring contracts, multipliers will increase.
Yeah, absolutely. So that enhances or flatters your exit price, right?
Yeah.
Your realization, the value realization. So really, really good point. So really important stuff. Okay, so case studies, referrals, recommendations of you, of your company, but also your personal brand, because we're individuals at heart, right? So we've got a personal brand online, we've got a personal brand. And in the modern world, it's not so much the number of people that you know, it's the number of people that know you. So your online brand is much more important than it was even 5 years ago. Can you co-create content that can be posted and reposted? So have you worked with a customer that will say good things? An example might be, will they do a podcast with you, or will they write a case study with you about your project? And that can benefit them because it shows their customers or their target market how much they care about their market and the kind of change projects that they're looking to put in place. You're the CEO of a local authority, might do a case study that we were at risk of our citizens' data. When I came here, there were lots of gaps, but we've invested with Matobo to mitigate that risk. That's fantastic from a sort of equity, if you like, brand equity for Matobo, but it's also fantastic for that local authority as well. So those now, as a public servant, it might not be easy to get that formal case study, but if you don't ask, it's a definite no. So they may not do a video with you, but they might. They might do a video for internal communications purposes about publicizing the service to their people, and they might also do it for residents as well. So I think it's worth investing time and effort in if you would find that a helpful process to go through, and you'll get a return on it. That's what I'm saying, Midwin. Similarly for Daryl, I've got to believe, do a change project, you get an exit. We've got a couple of businesses up for sale at the moment.
Yeah.
Go through that process. You might not want to tell the whole world because some of those very sensitive, but it's something in your arsenal that you can talk about and relay, and you could talk about in the round on your website, on LinkedIn, all of those things. Okay, and of course, cats keep secrets, so you could talk it through. Okay, right. So co-create video case studies. Yes, I've done that. Referrals, done that. LinkedIn recommendations, not just in endorsements, on your LinkedIn profiles. You can have about 50 skills, if you like, on your LinkedIn profile. I can take you through that individually. Those endorsements are helpful because someone can just click a button, but a written recommendation is much more valuable. Logo on your website, well, we just talked about that. I'd do it, proceed until apprehended, and you'll almost certainly never be apprehended, or it's a badge of honor if you are. So, all right. So, customer costs, facts and figures. Oh, actually, sorry. Is everyone okay if we take a 5-minute break and get a brew? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I'll keep the line up, and hopefully it won't reboot. And I'll see you. It's 38, so I'll see you at 43 if that's okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. See you in a bit.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Alrighty. How are we doing? We okay? Thank you for being on time. Right, here we go. Fantastic. Okay. Right, so customer costs I was going to talk about. And I know you've already got the point that that it's much cheaper to have existing customers. I think the number one reason that customers switch suppliers, I'm not just talking about energy customers, but about any suppliers, there's a reduction of effort on behalf of the supplier. Kind of take the business for granted, if you like, and get a little bit complacent, a little bit too comfortable in their position. I think that's a really dangerous place to be. And if customers don't feel valued or attended to or anything like that, our hard-earned cash, not just as taxpayers but as revenue earners for our customers, then that can be a real detractor in the relationship. People need to feel loved. I'm trying to think of examples of an energy provider up until the last couple of years. Energy providers have probably been guilty of that. They've been lulled into a false sense of security because they only have 3% customer attrition, and they've been lulled into it. You convince yourself, the executives will convince themselves that they must be doing a great job with our customers because we've only got 3% attrition, whereas the real reason is customers can't be bothered. They're just unexcited about energy until there's a war and energy prices go up, and then they get really excited. A bit like insurance, actually. The only day insurance is interesting is when you need to claim on it. And actually, that'd be interesting, Daryl, on insurance, which is especially in commercial insurances you're dealing with.
Yeah.
They'll actually look at the business and its attitude to risk. Is that right? Before coming up with a premium price, that's what I mean.
I found that certainly if I went back 5 years, there was a lot of questioning. But now that I can see that I've been trading 5 years, it's basically standard questions: tick, tick, yes, no, tick, tick, yes, no. And normally what it is, if let me think, as soon as they might ask a question, do you get involved in terms of the acquisition of businesses? What that will do, it won't prevent you being insured, but it will prevent you finishing the autocomplete sequence. So basically, if I answer certain questions, I end up having to go, obviously then somebody calls me or somebody comes onto the line and we have a discussion so they can understand the context of it.
Right, got you.
And then probably the next thing that happens, obviously, is in terms of your T's and C's, they'll be all sorted there.
Yes.
So it depends upon how trusting you are in terms of whether you just click to accept or not.
Yeah, well, I certainly hear that. And just reminded me, when I went through the online process with Hiscox to provide my PI insurance, my professional indemnity insurance, that one of the key questions on there was, do you advise on acquisition of companies? Which typically I don't, and I certainly wouldn't contract for it at this point. But that probably would have triggered an intervention of some kind. So yeah, really good point. Okay, so this is a bit of an old case study, but it's crystal clear why it came about, and so that's why I like using it. There is, sorry, I'm trying to find my mouse here. There we go. There's never a cat around when you need your mouse.
Hey, there it is.
You what? Sorry.
Said I bet you it's Blockbuster, and there it is.
Oh right, okay. Why have you seen this before, Midwin?
Nope.
No. Okay, so back in the day, when I were a lad, if you wanted to get a movie, you'd have to go down to Blockbuster, and there are going to be loads of different. I could have used a chip and pin example as well as a customer behavioral change or swipe or whatever it happens to be. Could have used keyless go in your car as well. That would be another example. But the one that seems to is the real poke in the eye, is because it's not subtle at all, is the Netflix v Blockbuster model. Yeah, people just didn't like the hassle of going down the shop. I mean, some people did. They wanted to get away from, because they had a crappy home life or whatever. But in the round, most people don't like going down the shops, getting a video, coming back. And if you're late returning it, a bit like your library, but they'll charge you maximum price for it. We all remember those days. Some more than others. You're sorry, I didn't want to sound patronising there, Midwin, but clearly you are the exception here. And,
I've done it once, and it was only when I was in America, and it was still a thing in America when it wasn't in the UK. So that's
is it. Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was just briefly. I think I must have been
12,
13, and me and my cousin went down to this thing called the Red Box outside the Wegmans, which was like it was an actual Netflix owned box, like a vending machine for videos, and it would vend whatever videos, DVDs, sorry, had been put in there.
Yeah.
And Netflix was still in their kind of sending out stage rather than the streaming stage. Never seen anything like it since. But yeah,
there you go. So it's an example of it was hassle, it was friction, and that was, well, I can't remember when Blockbuster actually closed down. It probably didn't actually close down in the UK till quite late, but that change was occurring around the 03, 04 kind of mark, if you like. And then, you know, some people resist that change, but all of a sudden there's a pivot point in the market where it becomes actually more difficult to trade one way than another. And Blockbuster didn't have a response to that. Netflix, Reid Hoffman, the guy who founded Netflix, was just looking one step further ahead. This is the way it's going. Let's double down. Let's do it. And now they've reached, and I've only just thought of this, so give me a few seconds to finish this off. Now Netflix, I mean, its real zenith was when lockdown happened, and there were some really serious familial and mental health issues, and people depended on Netflix, and everyone gets into binge consumption of TV box sets, which I already did before, but I didn't need lockdown to binge on TV. And Breaking Bad is the best program in the history of television making. Or We Can't Be Friends, Medwin. So then
I've still never seen it.
Right, okay, that's probably a badge of honor, of course. But that's my point. The external markets, you know, Netflix couldn't do anything about that, but it benefited from it. Now it's struggling to grow its supplier, its customer base, and people are cancelling contracts, or they're reducing the number of screens. I think it's a screen-based contracts. I've reduced ours from 4 to 2. Although apparently my son still found a way to jump on the back of our next Switch deal, even though he lives 60 miles away. So there's a way to do it, I'm sure. Anyway, that's the point. Now their model is struggling because the market conditions have changed again. So now I know that's a really big example, but what are the market dynamics that are going on that we need to be one step ahead of in order to retain our customers and keep delighting our customers? That's my point. And the other issue around customer service is that even if there's a difficulty, we probably phone call centers, and this is a really big example where people have to, you go through, you tell your story to one person, oh, it's not me, it's someone else, and you end up thinking you're in the middle of a Monty Python sketch because you get them referred around several different points. That is the surest way to lose a customer, and straight away. Mrs. Roselle knows all about that, but that's ownership of problems, and that's where our culture. I don't know, maybe if your business receives customer service calls, or if you have a self-service type model.
So we, in terms of customer service, so my main role at the moment is Matobo support. So I handle any kind of support queries that come in, usually via email. We've just moved to a ticketing system. We do phone calls. I think it's just kind of I think it's the thing everyone knows now, is that no one wants to pick up the phone, whether that's to call someone or to be called. It's immensely difficult to get hold of people. So we've moved to a ticketing system, but will initiate phone calls if people don't engage with what we're saying, which is our biggest struggle that we have, full stop, in our company, I think, is people kind of coming to us with issues, but then not engaging with us when we're telling them how to fix them, either because they don't care, or they don't understand, or they don't care enough to try and understand. So it's difficult. There's a reduction of customer effort is difficult to do when a lot of implementing our training involves effort on their part, because we can't do everything for them. We have a self-service way of doing things, but the majority of the time everyone's got their own learning management system that they want to host our training on, so it does has to involve them. So it can be a tricky one. It's not the same with every customer. Yeah.
Have you heard of a company called Access Planet?
Access Planet.
They're a learning management system, and a big customer of mine, even though they don't appear on my website. But yeah, it's an interesting area. Anyway, point being is that customer service is another way to keep customers. I often think the real measure, actually, of dealing with any customer of how they value their customer base is what happens when you phone customer service. And I had people talk about both sets of experiences. I had a really positive. I don't know if anyone knows Lakeland. Anyway, so we bought a recycling bin. It was 17 quid. 17 quid. It's almost I don't even have to think about it. I just want one of those and all the rest of it. Anyway, the handle broke off about 10 or 11 months, certainly just less than a year after we'd had it, and we went through to customer service and said we need one of these. I think it was during lockdown, so we couldn't get out to buy one. Can we buy another one from you? Can't really see it on your website. And they said no. They said, well, what's happened? Handle broke. I'm so sorry about that. Let me send another one out to you. Now you could argue, well, what a waste of money it was. We'd have been quite happy to spend another 17 quid getting a replacement. But actually, we were surprised and delighted by the level of customer service. They didn't have to do that. They did it. It gave us the impression they were very caring about. And they also said, don't send us the replacement if it's still serviceable but not brilliant. Is there someone you know that could make use of it? Which I thought, God, that's going way above and beyond. And I felt really positive about their brand. And we have, well, I'm telling this story now. And we have we've really supported their brand for loads of. I was about to say enunciate, but I don't think I mean that. Espoused might be espoused. Anyway, I'll look it up in the Oxford English afterwards. But we have really promoted, bigged up. That's the word I was looking for. We have bigged up their brand ever since. We spent loads more money. So that's £17 that it cost them to invest in their customer. They've got back easily tenfold, and that's just an example of. Yes, they could have said, oh, yeah, I'll send you a link and email it to you. But they went over and above, and we've come back time and time again because of that one incident. There you go. So it's often the real measure of a customer. So it's worth thinking about for their. You look as though you're thinking, Rachel, which I think is a good thing.
Oh, no, I'm just thinking about it. I mean, I was just thinking that John Lewis is similar, but we'd always buy our stuff from John Lewis because you knew that you could take it back and you'd get minimal issues. But yeah, I think you're right.
When you say but.
Oh, no, just that they've gone at Vanguard, which is a shame here in York.
Yeah.
But they've been a strong, solid company for a long time. And I think it's because they look after their customers that they've got that reputation.
I think so. And I'll tell you something else that they're doing as well, or rather not doing. They're not using the never knowingly undersold banner. They're not doing that now because the market has changed. There's lots of online competition. So they're finding other ways to retain their customers. And obviously all retailers have had a difficult time the last 10 years, which is why they've closed in I can't remember the name of the shopping centre. Is it not the Bull Ring, the other one?
Grand Central.
Thank you, Grand Central. I think they've closed that store now, haven't they, Daryl?
Yeah, it's going to be Wetherspoons.
Okay. I mean, you couldn't get further removed brand from brand, I don't think. But there we go. Okay, but York, I mean, that's still vacant. That whole, anyway, that's a retail conversation. But point being is that they were victim of market movements, weren't able. But there's online, so I think they've beefed up. And their online experience was pretty poor. We bought stuff from them in 2010, 2012, some appliances when we moved house, and it turned up on the wrong days. Sometimes it didn't turn up. There was a lot of teething problems, and they had to give us loads of vouchers as compensation to keep us involved with the brand. But we're back there. We're like you. We go to John Lewis. That's our first port of call. So they've invested in their customers, and it's kind of paid off. Okay, all right. So you're right. We've done the blockbuster thing. I'm not going to labour that. Now, here's an example of wallet share then. So what can we do with our practical stuff, with our businesses that, so they just might not be able to buy more training from us in the current guise. They might not be able to buy more marketing courses from us. They might not be able to buy more acquisition because they're just, so what else have we got in our arsenal, in our toolbox? I wish there was another football analogy because I can't use the word Arsenal too many times. But a couple of examples, let's say we're in the online business and we do websites. So an example, if you've got an engaged customer who really values what you do, the next step, we can either, you can't sell them more website expertise, or there comes a point, hello, I am going to take a screenshot. Right, 1 second. There we go. Fantastic. Right, there you go. Okay, right. So anyway, I'm just glad. Anyway, so website. What can we do? We can. There comes a limit. We can't sell them any more website stuff. So perhaps because we really know the way the market works, perhaps we can provide them a managed service with paid ads. They want to generate leads, so we can run their pay-per-click campaign because we know stuff that they don't. That might be a way that they're still paying us for their website development, or all of that creation, but we're going to get management fees out of them for the next 3-12 months, whatever it is. We're going to. Do you see where this is going? And then after that, well, maybe the real long-term play with the business is not, because buying leads has a bit of a half-life, and it's right here, right now, which is useful. But actually, SEO is the best long-term investment. Let's give them some SEO. That might be a way that we all of a sudden we grow a monthly value of an account from £100 to £500, and we've multiplied our yield from that account. And this happens more than you might think, but then you get into brand, at least the online part of the brand, which is where you go from being 500 a month to 700 a day, and that's a real force multiplier effect of going up the value chain, because you're trusted, you really know that customer, often over a period of years. But you're not just doing the same old. You're constantly taking gifts to meetings, insight, expertise, and you're the first person. Medwin's the first person they'll call before, when they've got the glint of a project in their eyes. We're going to call Medwin first because Medwin really knows us. We trust Medwin. That's where they're going to go. Right. So. And that's for online website design, and I picked that up because I think most people could kind of relate to that. Here's another one. Someone I've got specific experience in working with, an interior designer, and she designed interiors for multi-million-pound apartments. Excuse me. and based in, in fact, she's based in Solihull, but she does lots of work in Knightsbridge, Mayfair, and with the uber wealthy. Anyway, so interior design is where she went, and then because it's not a huge step, but it probably is for her, I'm like understating that, but into external design, because it's about how people feel about imagery in interior design, feng shui, and all of that. She went into external design and she built up her consultancy. She got trusted customers, and then she went onto their other properties, because often they'll have a Mayfair base and an Antibes base or whatever it happens to be. And then she went into products, so all the stuff that went inside. So where she did interior design, she provides the furnishings, the drapes, and everything else that goes into that with her affiliate brands. So all of a sudden, she's going from, say, 100K per customer for the interior design consultancy services to potentially many times that. So she's increasing her yield per customer, and then she put in all her expertise into masterclasses and bringing on the next generation of interior designers, I beg your pardon, to do it Sarah's way, and that's what she's doing. So that might be another example, and employing people in the process to help her deliver the service. That's another example. So let me
I'm just thinking of another way. This is a bit cheeky, but we did it with a project that I was on before. That if people were happy with the grant that we'd given them, we'd ask them if they'd alert their customers about us. And we provided them with a little bit of text as well and said, oh, if you know of anybody, then please forward it. And we did get a couple of jobs from doing that as well. So, you know, if it feels safe and you know that somebody is really delighted with what you do, then, you know, help them to shout about you.
That is fantastic. That's using, well, it's just you know, just being smart about your customers. You've done a fantastic thing for your customer. You've won them a grant, and you can help, and that's your customer. So you're advocating, if you like, or selling on your behalf. A great example of a silent sales force, or the unpaid sales force, if you like. Yeah, good one, Rachel. Grants is something I should know more about by this stage, but it's a different world. Obtaining grants. Maybe you should run a grants masterclass. That would be a really
yeah, we should. But there's less now that we've Brexited. We don't quite know what the landscape's going to look like. Probably not as good, but yeah.
Brexit always comes into the conversation somewhere, doesn't it? There you go. I'm not going to go down that cul-de-sac, if you'll forgive me.
It's my favourite awkward silence thing to do. Is like if there's because I just love like messing with people sometimes. So if there's a big silence in the room, like, all right, so what's everyone think of Brexit? Sort of leave that there and see what happens. Usually gets people talking, not about Brexit, but it just is like, oh shit, we need to talk about something because we don't want to talk about Brexit.
This is a little random, but I don't know if you know Billy Connolly, who I've got to know and like more over the last 20 years than certainly the 20 years before that. But he does a sketch where sometimes it can happen around the dinner table if you're in a big sort of you know, a dozen of you around the table, and there's a hiatus in the conversation, and he comes out with a line. He says, Norway's a funny shape.
I'm stealing that. I like that.
Yep, Norway's a funny shape. And it is. But anyway, there we go. Right, slides shared. So, sales champions. So we talked about avatars earlier on in this series, and just in case you forgot, you thought I'd forgotten about this. It's really, really important. It comes back every time, particularly when we're talking about maximizing yield. So what are the existing customers that we've got? So I'm not going to play them, but I've got examples on my YouTube channel that when I'm pitching for business, typically they're going to fit into probably one of 3 different types of customer that I'm targeting, and I'll send them a case study appropriate to that kind of, you want me to help you increase sales, you're a solopreneur, this is someone who you might be able to relate to that's in a similar position that I helped. That's the kind of message here. So I've got a number of videos, but these are my go-to ones because they're quite relatable. So if anyone wants sales messages or alignment, Mike, what did I? So he was doing a presentation to a CEO of a local authority, actually, and with the greatest of respect to Michael, he's typical former academic, so he uses 100 words when only 10 will do, because he really knows loads about this subject. But I took him from about 49 slides down to 7. You've got to be able to do it on 7. You just won't get anyone's attention with more than 7 slides. You just won't. So that's what I did for him. With Steph, she runs a dairy farm. It's milk with a difference, free range milk, which is a thing. I didn't realize, but in Cumbria it is. So I also introduced her, so that's part of my value set of having been around an awful long time, you know, an awful lot of people. So so I introduced her to a firm and I coached her for that. It wasn't really a pitch, but it was for that discussion. What do you want to say, do, or agree? That was, if I come across someone that's else in coaching, I can point them in that direction. And then Dan with something. My point is, have you got go-to content that you can instantly point people towards? So you can explain something in person, this is fine, but following up with, this is what I meant by, this is what I've done for Dan, Michael, Steph, whatever it happens to be. And then the videos are really, they're evergreen as well, because once you've got them recorded, then you just keep pointing people there. It's repeat. What do they call it? Yes, evergreen content. So, and that's really worth investing. And these 3 people are all up in Lancashire. So I hired the function room above an office, and I got some external catering brought in, and it probably cost me a few £100, no more than that, for the day. I had a professional videographer do it. And I've used those for the last 4 years on my website, and I've got loads of return out of them. So I would, video case studies are so much, they just bring it to life, and they only need to be about 30 seconds long. The shorter the better. And customers and what they are really, really worth doing. Okay, right, so activity, right. So quick exercise for you. Let's take 1 minute on this from 30 seconds. Case studies, customers that you can go to that can be your silent sales force, your unpaid sales force. Let's have a think about, who would you call your top 3 go-to customers for what did you deliver to them? I'm not going to start the timer yet. What benefits did you deliver, and what would they say about you? What media would you do? Do you trust them on video? Some people don't like video, don't perform well. Or would you do a written case study? Would you ask them to attribute these words to them, so you could use that as a bit of micro content online? And then which of your prospects would you direct towards that bit of content? Sorry, I'll stop talking now, but anyway, I'll give you a minute to think that through. Who's your top 3? Okay. What are our thoughts? Don't have to name names if you don't want to, but just talk about customer A or whatever it happens to be. Who wants to go first?
I'll put,
After you, Daryl.
okay, I'll just put, am I on yet?
Mhm.
Business sales point of view, I've mentioned two past sales. One was Bill, one was Peter. Bill, after, should we say, quite a long saga, we eventually got his business sold after about 18 months. And expectation was probably 6 months at the beginning, but it was about just really changing the terms, looking at different ways of approaching buyers, encouraging conversations between buyers and sellers and keeping it very informal, and also highlighting key changes within their structure. There's no way on earth you'll ever get him to appear on a video. But I think, really, when you are in the business sales market, it's quite difficult sometimes. But I think there's obviously, you can always tell stories. And I think the ability to always have that story is the most important thing. I think Peter would fit into a similar category, whereas with this one is we actually got that business marketed and sold and handed over within about 12 weeks. That was quite a, we just worked very hard. It was just in the right place and the right time. Online retail business, I think that would be just about a little bit about above and beyond, doing things to make your customer really understand, really increase their commercial knowledge and financial knowledge. One that's quite interesting at the moment so one thing that I do is probably every couple of weeks I interview an applicant who wants to come and run a business in the UK. And I've had a lot of people say that you're not like most people that we talk to in this sort of area, are you? So what do you mean? I says, well, he says you seem to simplify things, because I think they're very. So if you imagine, if you're overseas, you're coming into the UK, you don't know the UK very well, but probably the people that you've dealt with tend to be somebody, let's say, in public services or wherever, that they work for public bodies, so that they can be very dry. Whereas, when you're looking at a business case, to me, it's all about, well, okay, well, what's the message? How are you getting your message across? Can you get your message across? And, what are you doing? And, some people, I'll see something in a business case that says, or a business plan which says in 6 months' time, I'm going to talk to this person. And I'll just turn around to them and say, why don't you do that on Tuesday? And I think those will become really interesting stories. So we're in a situation where there's been a bit of a delay because of the Home Office. But, within the next sort of 4 weeks, I'll be hosting the first sort of workshops with these people, which will then start the sort of the 6 monthly reviews.
Right.
And so that, those will certainly cover a lot of content, because as you can imagine, with any business case, it's all going to be hard work. So even, they've put a lot of work into the business case, or they've paid somebody to put work into the business case, etc. They've actually got to try and deliver it in a strange country. Not in some cases, not having things sorted out where I'm living, etc., and everything. And so that becomes quite a story. And then that is all about customer service, probably in its purest form, is the only way that they're going to succeed in many cases, because it's really upping their level of understanding and expectations of what their customer expectations.
Yeah. That's a good shout. And gosh, that is a changing market as well. So can I just ask you, just out of personal interest, what's driving them to come to a different country and start a business? What is it? A pull from the UK, or is it a push from their country of origin, or what's going on there?
I think there's still a massive pull to the UK. Let's face it, we all grumble and groan and all talk about, and we see people on television grumbling and groaning and whatever. But at the end of the day, they just see it as opportunities. So as it stands at the moment, if you look at the statistics and whatever, look in terms of how many overseas applicants there are to UK universities every year.
Yeah.
Look how much people are prepared to pay to get into UK universities.
Look how much people are prepared to go through just to get here.
Exactly.
We, despite Brexit and despite us being a grumpy country and despite all the other stuff, like there's still a level of freedom and achievement here.
Yeah.
That people want.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great shout. I have to say, when I first met my wife in September 2009, first of all, I didn't read an awful lot, maybe business articles, short stuff. But I had a particular outlook on life, which when I think about it, I'm actually amazed she had the patience to stay with me. Anyway, the title of the first book she bought me was Bloody Foreigners. And it's a fantastic book, especially if you're, should we say, unenlightened. But it talks about the rich history going back centuries of Britain becoming a melting pot as opposed to a salad bowl of immigration. And it's not a subject we're necessarily talking about, other than understanding assets and retention and all of those dynamics and what's going on and influences and stuff like that. I think is highly relevant. So yeah, really, really, really good shout there. And it's encouraging to know that even though you read the media and it says one thing, the actual reality on the ground is quite another, and that's really positive. So yeah, good, really good.
The statistics are astonishing in terms of the numbers that want to come into the UK.
Yeah, I'm sure that reflects in your applications, which you may not have direct sight of, Rachel, but the admissions process certainly will.
Yeah, absolutely. York is very popular to study, but equally, as been said, the UK is renowned for its education. So international students pay thousands to be here.
Yes.
Yeah. My granddad cycled from Switzerland when he was 17 to come here.
Wow.
That is such a Swiss thing to do.
I know. He cycled from Switzerland, came over to Calais, and then by the time he hit Dover, he had a puncture, and then met my nan because she helped him fix his puncture on his bike, and that's it.
What a marvelous, what a marvelous story that is. Fantastic. And
life's about stories.
Yeah. And the bit of York that I live in is on the cusp of Fossgate and Walmgate. If you know that particular bit of the road, so it's within the city walls, and there's a lot of student accommodation in and within 100 meters of the block that I live in. And in the last 6 months, there have been lots of Chinese, as it turns out, but and they don't even bother putting the signs in English. But there's lots of Chinese supermarkets, takeaways, eat-in cafes as well, and it's fantastic to see. And I can, because Birmingham has got its own Chinese quarter, hasn't it, with James Wong and all those guys, and I can see this little part of York, which is probably 100 meters by 100 meters. I can see that becoming Chinatown or the Chinese Quarter, or in fact, we've got so many quarters here. I think PwC must have been doing the accounts, but yeah, we have. I can see that, and I think that's really, really positive. And I think it's fantastic, and they got loads of money. So please do come spend it here, and that's yeah. So yeah. Let's be shallow about these things. I mean, that's where employment and all of those things. That's fantastic. Anyway, so your clients and what do you want them to do for you? Because it's got to have a reason. Anyway, so
we did a nice thing on the project that I was previously on, because Enterprise Works is new. It would be nice to take this forward, but in when I was on the grant previously, we did a lot of video case studies. We did written ones as well, but we did a lot of video case studies. And what we videoed was the customer getting the grant, the machinery that they bought, and then what they were able to do with the machinery, what products they could make, and then what the benefits of that business were, like how they could grow the business, or etc., etc. And then what I did, so all those case studies can be viewed on our PAPI website. But then I did a piece of segmentation work with our customers. And then for anybody that I was reaching out to, I would look at what type of business they were, and then I would send them a relevant case study from, say it was manufacturing I was reaching out to, I would send them a manufacturing case study, just so that it really brought it to life, and it kind of helped them to apply it in their business and got them thinking how they could use the grant for themselves.
Fantastic, highly relevant, and it shows a real depth of understanding on your part and your organisation's part, and maturity, if you may say so, that you're taking the time to think about what might really help them versus another case study. You're really taking time about that. Fantastic. Medwin, have you got any sort of thoughts?
So from the little task we just had, I've written down. So I've got Michael, who's bought all 3 of our training courses, and he would talk about sort of how great the content is and the expertise and knowledge behind it. I've got Irene, who has 2 training courses on her own LMS, learning management system. She would talk about great customer service. That would probably be written. I've said a video for Michael. He presents quite well and is quite confident. Irene, however, is less confident, so would probably more likely be a written type thing. Joe is someone who we've been exploring a phishing email simulation system with. So with one of the councils, we essentially did a fake phishing attack on them, which then, if someone clicked on this link in the phishing video, would reroute them to one of our training videos going, uh-oh, you got caught, gotta do the training again. So yeah, we're sort of testing that a little bit with him. It's worked very nicely for his council. So yeah, he would talk about us keeping people on their toes even after we finish training them.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Actually, it has a dual benefit, of course, of reinforcing your position in the account. So, I mean, that is a real win-win. Fantastic. Okay, right. So, where's all this going? We're actually out of time. I'm okay to carry on just for a couple of minutes, but I don't mind at all if you've got to jump off and get on to your next thing. I am still going to carry on though. So right, so don't worry about there we go. Don't worry about want the link. Try and get past all that. So we've been at the very beginning. We told our story. We've gone to market with those stories through identified avatars. We generated some leads. We've qualified those opportunities. We've got a pursuit strategy, or the bare bones of a pursuit strategy. We've negotiated and closed those deals, and now we're maximizing yield. Maximizing yield requires a bit of a plan. What are we going to do with that customer, etc., etc. So these are the thoughts I had around the strategic account plan, and less is more here. So really interesting way that I've seen universities change over the last 5 years is when you're in the university business, often they're expecting academic texts, and a PhD is often measured in 100,000 words, you know, in terms of the number of words. So I do a proposal on a page because it's much. That's where my head's at. I spent 30 years with people who've got no attention span whatsoever, and so if you can't get it on a page, don't bother. So, and that takes a real mindset. I'm not saying it's a real skill, but it's just a change of thinking. So, a strategic account plan is probably, it's more, I would say, maximum of 3 pages, but it's certainly more 3 pages than it is 30. So, what does it consist of? It consists of the as is. Where are you at currently now? What's the steady state? And if nothing happens, this is what we're doing. What they currently buy from you. Who's your sponsor? Who's your executive? And it may not be the CEO. It might be the CFO. Or it might be the IT director. It might be someone else. But who's your sponsor? Your customers' plans. Basically, what are they doing? What are the market trends in their market, and how can you respond, adapt to those dynamics, if you like? How can you help them? And what part of those plans do you play a part in, if you chose to? Because remember, you've got rights and entitlements. You don't have to play a part if it doesn't fit your business model, but strongly consider that. If you did take part, what were the benefits you could deliver? Again, this is using up all the skills and mindsets that we've discussed in the earlier modules. What's the size of the prize? If you do all that, what do you get? Remember, we talked about bidding for a £1 coin earlier on, and because I just couldn't figure it out, I bid £12 million and I still lost for a £1 coin. The other guy bid 15 million in a sort of, I think it's called a blind auction. Okay, so size of the prize, and what's the competitive landscape? Who are you up against? And it might be in-house, against an in-house solution where, in your terms, Daryl, it would be a management buyout. Maybe that's your competition. Anyway, so that's who's your competition, and who do you need to be talking to if you want to go on that growth plan? Who else do you need to be talking to? So I would have thought more revenue, more people to talk to, more people to cover. And then what's your pursuit, your close strategy? What's your plan to get there? Your strategic account plan. There you go. Let me come off of there. Right. That's what I wanted to cover. Now I can send that to you as a, I think you should have got the slides, but I can send that as a, Darryl, you didn't get slides? It was only this morning. I have to say it was only this morning. I sent them about 8:30, 8:45, something like that. Okay. Apologies if you didn't get them in time, but that's what happened. So come to the end now. I recognise that we're over time. I've really enjoyed this. I'm not going to go through people that started and haven't ended up, but thanks for your money. They're still paid. So can I ask a favour of you now? Not right here, right in this minute, but I would be really grateful for your thoughts in terms of a 60-second video with what do you think you've learned? And we're all at different stages of our career journeys. And what do you think you will? What changes? What will you implement with the way you go about your business as a result of having been on here? And would you recommend it to others? I genuinely don't mind what the answer is, but it needs to be in your own authentic sort of words. I will follow up with a bit of an email just setting out those points as a framework, if you like, if it would be helpful. But I'd be really grateful if you would kind of do that. And of course, if you felt the LinkedIn things still need to do that, if you're very welcome to. I'll send you the link to put some time in the calendar. But I want to say thank you very much for your your time and attention, and actually I've really enjoyed the engagement as well. This has been the most engaged cohort I've done. This is only a fourth cohort. I'm doing the next one in January, and now I'm asking you for a refill, not right here, right now, but if you think anyone might benefit from this, when I start up again in January, I would love to hear about it. Or if I'm going to send you a link afterwards that you can direct someone to, that would be fantastic. Is there anything else that anyone wants to say, or?
Just that I've really enjoyed this as well. I think I was originally concerned that it might have been a bit sort of lectury, which is, I struggle with lectury learning just because of the type of learner I am. But I think the fact that we've been having really compelling and useful, interesting conversations during this course has actually, if anything, been just as helpful as, you know, everything else that we've actually learned. So the combined efforts of everyone that's been involved in this whole process, I think, has been a massive help, massive confidence boost, massive. Yeah, I'm just excited now to just go and start getting stuck in, you know. So, yeah.
Good news, fantastic, good feedback. Thank you very much.
I'd reinforce what Medwin said, really. I
Yeah.
think, as you say, the interactive side of it has worked very well. And I think is certainly from, in terms of obviously your planning, Keith, you know, it's a very logical process. I think that, you know, it's, you know, that there's a really good flow to the conversation. And I certainly, you know, before answering some of the things that you said before, I will go back and review some of the stuff to just remember what I've learned or what I forgot since.
Good news. Well, listen, thank you for that. Rachel, you're very welcome to say something or not as you.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it. I've just had a look. I've got 50 pages of notes.
Wow.
They are screenshots in there as well. But no, I'm looking forward to now sort of spending a bit of time going away and sort of dissecting it. And then Sam has asked me to put together a bit of a plan on what we're going to do sort of going forward. So I think if there is anything to help me with that you could do, Keith, I know that you send links of all the recordings. I don't know if you'd be able to send me an email with the links of all the recordings together, just so that if ever I get stuck on anything, I can easily.
Yeah, I'll second that. If that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's
Thank you.
That's a really good shout. I will make a note to send you links to.
Actually, also maybe all the PowerPoints in one as well. If that's, I don't know if that's going to be possible to put them all in.
Almost certainly. I need to think about how to do it. What it might be,
or as 7 attachments in one email, maybe something like that.
I think I could do that. It's like, because of all the imagery and stuff like that, it's going to be big files. So if you know WeTransfer, what I'll probably do is upload it and send you the links, and you can download when you're comfortable doing it. That's a really good shout. I'll take notes on doing all that. But once again, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to record it as well, so you can easily listen back to it, because I think often you come away from things and then over time you forget, don't you? So it's nice that we'll be able to go back on it.
Yes, indeed. The only thing I would ask, and I can't believe I'm having to say this out loud, is when the recordings are for you, because you've invested in this and all this, I'd be really grateful if you didn't.
No.
Besides the links or whatever.
I'm going to start a sales course now, by the way, guys.
Okay. Okay. Well, I've got your home address, Medwin. I'm gonna. So I wouldn't invite you. I look like a bailiff. Fantastic. Listen, great pleasure. Have a brilliant rest of the day, and good selling.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks. See you all.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.